Hello and welcome back to the Shakey Sonnet Show. I am Tootight Lautrec, the drag laureate of the Sonnetarium, and we are here once again in the Sonnetarium at the bottom of the down staircase in the permanently sequestered remainders section of an unnamed local library, which may or may not have two stone lions lounging on the front steps. And if you think that maybe that's moss growing in their manes, you may be right, or they could just be green with envy from some rival who's roaming around the wilds of New York. But in any case, if they're not, I have donned my enviously green gown to celebrate Sonnets 78 and 79 because we are in the second half, hallelujah, of examining all 154 of Shakespeare's sonnets that are in the 1609 quarto version. So, Sonnet 78 marks the beginning of what are called the rival poet sonnets, which is 78 through 86, where the green-eyed monster jealousy rears its ugly head, and our narrator's other head also rises up to look cockeyed at his rival. If you have been following us here in the Sonnetarium, you may know that often in Shakespeare, where there is a feather, there is a pen. And when there is a pen, there is often a penis. And if you're new here, and you're not used to puerile, self-indulgent attempts at humor, double entendres, or outright ribald and bawdy repartee spewed by a beglittered, sometimes bedraggled, but rarely embittered drag queen, well, welcome. As I've said, Sonnet 78 through 86 are called the rival poet sonnets, and I'm expecting that the sauce will fly. And who, may I ask, doesn't like a little sauce every once in a while? Am I right? Now, although the experts agree that Sonnet 78 through 86 are the rival poet group, I might argue that Sonnet 76 and 77, 76 is Why is my verse so barren of new pride, and 77's I've written all about you, and so here's an empty book for you to write in now. I would suggest that taken as a progressive narrative sequence, all of these sonnets, taken as a progressive narrative sequence, I would think that 76 and 77 show that the narrator suspects that something is up. Instead of a little bit of lipstick on the beloved's ruff, perhaps there are some suspicious ink stains on the blotter that are definitely not of the narrator's normal shade. According to Edmondson and Wells, and I'll file through my desk here to pick it up. Edmondson and Wells, in which they look at all of the sonnets of Shakespeare, whether they were in the 1609 quarto or if they had been written in the plays. According to Edmondson and Wells, Sonnets 78 through 86 were originally composed sometime between 1596 and 1604, after the last sonnets in the series, Sonnets 87 through 154. So my conjecture is that Sonnet 78 through 86 may have been constructed and placed right smack dab in the center of the series, perhaps to create a sense of drama, because infidelity is always interesting, at least for the onlookers, perhaps not if you're right in the thick of it, so to speak. So, rival poet or rival poets, plural, brings up a lot of questions. Is there a real person or persons that we can identify as the rival or rivals? Or is it a complete fiction? Are the character or characters invented by Shakespeare in order to shake things up? So briefly, Sonnets 78, 82, and possibly 83 suggest multiple rivals. Sonnet 83, if both your poets, does not mean the narrator plus a different rival. So then sonnets 79, 80, possibly 83, 84, 85, and 86 hint at only one rival. But who? Who could this rival be, or who could these rivals be? Well, I'm happy to announce here today, after extensive research, poring over multiple scholarly avenues of inquiry, I've come to the conclusion that the rival poet is, drumroll please, Christopher Marlowe, or Ben Jonson, or Drayton, or Spencer, or Chapman, or Samuel Daniel, or Richard Barnfield, or Francis Davison, or John Davies, or Gabriel Harvey, or Torquato Tasso, or the long dead before Shakespeare, Homer, Virgil, Horace, Chaucer, or Dante, and that affable familiar ghost in Sonnet 86 is perhaps Dante's Beatrice. And here, once again, I will thank the bard. I'm going to thank my little peacock feather here too for staying in the right spot to show off its lovely feathers. I'm just going to put it right here for the moment. I'm going to thank the bard for scholars like my pal, who is not with us, and who I've never met, Hyder Edward Rollins, who did the variorum of the sonnets that was published in 1944, and he says in his variorum, at the end of his exhaustive, but in no way exhausting, exploration of all of the theories about who the rival poet might be, he says that after reading hundreds of pages that with absolute confidence make varying identification of the rival, it is a genuine relief to learn that the motif of a rival poet is traditional among the Petrarchans. So, in fact, I think that the rival is an invention by Shakespeare in order to insert some drama in this series, and so that it reads a little bit more thrillingly as a narrative sequence. And I do wish that Hyder Edward Rollins' variorum were more accessible. I pirated my copy. I photocopied it from the NYU library. Don't tell anyone. I photocopied every single page and printed it out myself. But it's not in print anymore, and it's a shame because his commentary is colorful, it's witty, it's pithy, it's bitchy. All the things that he says about the commentary and about the commentators are just a delightful read in and of themselves. And, you know, there's always that question, if you were to have dinner with some dead people, who would it be? And I'm not quite sure that I would choose Shakespeare because I think he might smell. I would choose Hyder Edward Rollins because witty, bitchy, and pithy is right up my alley, if you know what I mean. So, no more talk. Let's get to the sonnet. Sonnet 78. Sonnet 78. So oft have I invoked thee for my muse, and found such fair assistance in my verse, as every alien pen hath got my use, and under thee their poesy disperse. Thine eyes, that taught the dumb on high to sing, and heavy ignorance aloft to fly, have added feathers to the learned's wing, and given grace a double majesty. Yet be most proud of that which I compile, whose influence is thine, and born of thee. In others' works thou dost but mend the style, and arts with thy sweet graces graced be. But thou art all my art, and dost advance as high as learning my rude ignorance. Well, so, the first quatrain. So oft have I invoked thee for my muse. You've been my muse this whole time for my sonnets, and as such we have been great together. You're a doll, I'm a genius, the sonnets are brilliant. Such fair assistance in line 2. You've been such a great inspiration, and I've written such magnificent poetry about you that now every alien pen thinks that they can do it. Now everyone wants a go at you with their pen, so to speak. Every alien pen hath got my use. Yes, that's right, my use. Not their use, my use. You're my muse, and only I can use you as my muse, if I had my druthers. But now all these charlatan poetasters are writing about you, when I'm the one who should be writing about you, who has written about you, and it's only because of me that they are writing about you, because they're copycats. The second quatrain. Thine eyes that taught the dumb on high to sing, and heavy ignorance aloft to fly. And here we've got this soaring imagery. Taught the dumb on high to sing, on high to be, meaning loudly, and heavy ignorance aloft to fly, so that it adds feathers, adds wings to your beauty, so that it soars high above everybody else's. And lifted the intelligence of the stupid, poor dumb genius me. So it's made my imagination fly, pen, feathers also. The Latin derivation of feather is penna, which is why, and it's also used as a pen, the quill. And we all know, of course, what a pen is. So what was already graceful, which is you, I've made more graceful in my poetry. The third quatrain. Yet be most proud of that which I compile. I'm the best. Poetry written by anyone else about you, they're just sharpening their pens, which is what people do when they want their quill to write cleanly. They're just sharpening their pens, which is, in other words, in others' works thou dost but mend the style, and that's what mending the style is. They're sharpening their pens. They're getting their pens ready for you because I've laid the way for them. And their poetry can't do justice to you the way that mine does. And in lines 11 and 12, in other works thou dost but mend the style, and arts with thy sweet graces graced be. And what is that? Graces? Graced? What could that be? Could that be a polyptoton? One of our cocktail party drinking words? Yes, indeed it can be a polyptoton, which, if you don't recall, is a figure consisting in the use. Let me wet my whistle first. Polyptoton is a figure consisting in the use of the same word or words of the same immediate derivation used in a different case, inflection, or voice in the same sentence. So polyptoton, yay. And then we get to the couplet. But thou art all my art, and dost advance as high as learning my rude ignorance. And, enough about me and my genius and how I'm better than all the poets. You are all my art. You elevate me. And if you are still paying attention, of course, you'll notice that in lines 12, 13, and 14, art, and art is another play on word, which, oh my goodness, it looks like we won't be able to get out of this cocktail party standing up, because here is antineclasis. That's right. Polyptoton followed by antineclasis. An antineclasis is a literary trope in which a single word or phrase is repeated, but in two different senses. And don't even get me started on figura etymologica. I mean, really, don't get me started. Now, do you actually need to know the difference between a polyptoton and antinoclassis in order to trot it out at your hoity-toity cocktail party? No, you do not. But you must act as though you do, and probably best to keep it close to your chest until after the second round of drinks come out, because then probably nobody will notice anyway. So that's 78. I'm writing for you, I've written these things for you, and now everybody's copying. And then to continue the argument is Sonnet 79. So let's get right to that toot sweet and the tutor the sweeter. Sonnet 79. Whilst I alone did call upon thy aid, my verse alone had all thy gentle grace. But now my gracious numbers are decayed, and my sick muse doth give another place. I grant, sweet love, thy lovely argument deserves the travail of a worthier pen. Yet what of thee thy poet doth invent, he robs thee of, and pays it thee again. He lends thee virtue, and he stole that word from thy behavior. Beauty doth he give, and found it in thy cheek. He can afford no praise to thee, but what in thee doth live. Then thank him not for that which he doth say, since what he owes thee, thou thyself dost pay. Okay, so I used to be the only one, and this is actually very clear. I don't think it really needs that much explication. I used to be the only one, and I alone, my verse alone. Nobody else praised your beauty, but now what, I'm chopped liver? I don't think so. But okay, I admit it. You're magnificent, and your magnificence perhaps needs a pen worthy of you, more worthy of you than my pen is. Maybe my pen doesn't stand up as straight as it used to. Maybe it doesn't stand up as often as it used to. Maybe it kind of droops to the side sometimes before you're ready to stop writing. Who knows? But maybe you deserve a worthier pen than mine. But, and it's a big but this guy, yes, oh wait, yes, in fact, guy. We have a gender here. Yet what of thee thy poet doth invent? He robs of thee. So we definitely know the gender of the rival. He robs of thee. This guy adds nothing to you. He robs you of your graces. He steals them to put into what he calls his poems. And then in the third quatrain, he lends thee virtue, and he stole that word from thy behavior. Beauty doth he give, and found it in thy cheek. He takes and takes and takes and takes from you all your best qualities. His poetry is nothing without them. And we've got this, whereas in Sonnet 78 we have this up and down motion with the lofty, you send me on high, I sing aloud your graces. Now we've got this circular motion where he takes, you give, he takes, you give, he takes, you give, and round, 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 round the circle. Then we get to the couplet. Then thank him not, thank him not for that which he doth say, since what he owes thee, thou thyself doth pay. Now in this version, Penguin version, edited by John Kerrigan, and in many other versions, thyself in the last line is one word. The word that we know is thyself. But in the 1609 quarto, thy and self were two words, and which makes one think that while you're poking around with another pen, what he owes thee, thou thyself dost pay. So you're paying with yourself, not just your graces, but maybe actually parts of yourself, like your own pen. But don't be so impressed. He's just copying what he sees. He's a hack. And I have to say, this poem, it's very accessible. It sounds really good. There's a circularity of argument that finds an echo in the language. In line 3, the gracious numbers decayed, those long A sounds that are sort of inverted. Lines 6 and 7 of the, he robs thee of in line 6 and pays it thee again. And then in line 7, in the same exact spot, it flips thee of. No, I'm sorry. Line 6 is, yet what of thee thy poet doth invent. In line 7, he robs thee of. So of thee and thee of are flipped to make the circle complete. Quite nice. And then I think the best line is the last line. Since what he owes thee, thou thyself dost pay. It's sort of the O's, since the S of the since and the S of the O's and the THs of thee, thou, thy, and then the S of thyself and dust. It just sort of slips and slides along like a snake, leading to that elongated percussive P and the long A at the end. Since what he owes thee, thou thyself dost pay. So it's kind of a slithery, slidey line that kind of brings the point home with a little cobra bite at the end. Just lovely, I think. So the questions we always ask: is there a male or a female indicated anywhere? And yes, we know the rival is definitely a male. The narrator and the beloved are unspecified, so if this were acted out, it could be still a female as the narrator, and it could be a female as the beloved. But the preponderance of, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, feather, feather, pen, pen, and oh my, points in the direction of males, in my opinion. Dramatically, interestingly, Edmondson and Wells place the dates of the rival poet sonnets directly after poets that appear in A Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing. So what does that tell us? I don't know either, but I found it interesting. And certainly there are enough jealous lovers in all of Shakespeare and the plays that I'm sure either of these would be able to find a comfortable place among the plays. Now, narratively, there does seem to me to be a progression, a narrative progression in these sonnets, and I think it's a satisfying read so far as that progression occurs. At the beginning, we had a rather innocent seeming relationship between an older person and a younger person, which grew progressively more intimate and even sexual. And once they were an actual couple, the sonnets that followed were sexy, poems about sexy hijinks, flirtations, separations, and reunions. And looking back over the previous 10 sonnets before these to see how we got to where we are in 78 and 79, I do see stages of growing separation, either emotionally or even in the imagination of the narrator. The older lover does seem to be aware that perhaps poetry is the only thing that the beloved is there for. Maybe his pen is not as impressive as other pens that the beloved has come across. His penis, I'm talking about, but the poems have been. And so that's his only quality. That's the only thing that he can give because he's older. Maybe he feels insecure about it. And this insecurity breeds jealousy and resentment. And now we get to 78 and 79, where now perhaps not even his poetry is enough to keep the young lover. And I think that's somewhat devastating, and it must be a devastating thing to feel. So in terms of the way this reads as a development in a book, it works for me. There's conflict, regret, jealousy, insecurity, and most of all, self-reflection. And because of that, I am all in on this. And I can't wait to see what comes next. And I hope that you will join me here again when we delve into the next poems of the rival poet sequence. Until we meet again, remember, the world is full of wonder. Pay attention. I am Tootight Lautrec. Mwah.